Enrique Rojas Montes, Spanish doctor of psychiatry, Opus Dei supernumerary, author of numerous mental health books, and beloved psychologist of the elite, is a man with a taste for the finer things in life, specifically fine wine and art. He promotes an image of caring concern and compassion, offering insights into his specific interests, the promotion of greater happiness and satisfaction in all people. He comes across as equal parts charming and fatherly, but his down-to-earth, pragmatic persona may just be a mask. Digging up all of the information on this guy took me down a long and winding rabbit hole full of old blog posts and articles on a variety of blogging and news sites. I found a significant paper trail of allegations against Rojas stretching back decades. Thanks to those numerous posts and all the receipts that people went to the trouble of including, the image of Enrique Rojas Montes that emerges is pretty far removed from the exalted, prestigious one that he and his friends promote through the Spanish media and society. In this episode, we will explore the scant, publicly available information from the World Wide Web, and we will examine the allegations and claims against one of Opus Dei's most high-profile members. My name is Beck Griffin. Welcome to the Deep Dive Project. Now, it should go without saying, but I need to issue a couple of quick disclaimers. First of all of the information that I am presenting in this video is publicly available on the World Wide Web. Additionally, this video is a representation of my opinion of a man named Enrique Rojas Montes, and everything that I say is alleged unless otherwise proven in a court of law. I have done my best to substantiate any claims concerning legal disputes or scandals, but it is important to note that because so much of this story played out before the dawn of the internet, the information we discuss today should not be considered comprehensive or complete in any way. There are some things I simply cannot prove because the information is not available online. All of my references and a transcript of this episode are linked in the description down below. Do not attempt to contact, or harass anyone mentioned in this video on behalf of me, yourself, or anyone else. The purpose of this episode and of the Deep Dive Project as a whole is to give my perspective on issues related to human rights and to notify you of matters of public concern. If you would like to connect with me, you can find my social media and email in the description of this episode, along with a link where you can virtually buy me a cup of coffee for $5. The Deep Dive Project is a fully independent venture, and due to the nature of the information that I am sharing, episodes are often not eligible for monetization or are throttled by YouTube's algorithm. So I am deeply appreciative of everyone who has supported my caffeine-fueled endeavors so far. Lastly, if you or someone that you know needs mental health support, I have linked a variety of global resources in the episode description. Life is hard, but we do not have to go at it totally alone or unequipped. If you need help, please reach out. Due to the fact that any negative press about Rojas, from what I've seen, has been landlocked to Spain, it is unlikely anyone in the English-speaking world is even aware of the pretty long and scandalous history that Rojas has. As I was attempting to piece this whole story together, it definitely felt like there had been a pretty concentrated effort made to suppress this information. But this is all public if you know where to look and if you're willing to spend the time translating everything from Spanish to English, which I was. When I began learning about Rojas, I thought I was going to uncover the story of a medical doctor with ties to Opus Dei behaving unethically towards other Opus Dei members under his care. But the reality is that Rojas appears to have left a number of individuals, Opus Dei affiliated and otherwise, worse off than he found them. One of the most detailed blogs I found was run by a woman named Isabel Caballero. On her blog's profile, she wrote that, "My name is Isabel, although sometimes on the internet I identify myself as Al Alba because despite having no psychiatric or criminal record, they come to get me at dawn, almost at daybreak, during those hours when there are never any witnesses. Enrique Rojas, colluding with the father of my children and my eldest daughter, tried to remove me from the picture. It is not necessary to belong to Opus Dei or have any type of relationship with Enrique Rojas for him to intervene in our lives. With enough contacts to get things done and lacking any scruples to carry them out, he acted against me while he was being tried in a case with a similar motive. I feel like I have inadvertently stumbled upon a very double-faced actor. And now I know way more about Enrique Rojas Montes than I ever wanted to. But that means that I do have an opinion of the kind of person Rojas is, and he is an interesting bird, to say the least. The majority of the information that I learned about his professional career and accolades came from a January 2024 article on El Mundo titled "Copyright Brick and Wines: The Origin of the Millionaire Fortune of the Psychiatrist Enrique Rojas and His Family." The so-called psychiatrist to the elite, Rojas is an Opus Dei supernumerary whose wife is also reportedly an Opus Dei as well. He has been a prominent Spanish psychiatrist known for his controversial views on a variety of topics. He runs the Rojas Estape Institute, a practice that he inherited from his psychiatrist father, Luis Rojas. The practice is located on 100 Serrano Street in Madrid, which is noted to be the most expensive street in Spain. Rojas has published several books focusing on mental health and personal well-being. However, some of his views, such as those regarding homosexuality, have sparked significant criticism. He has described homosexuality as a disorder that he believes can be treated, a stance that aligns with outdated and widely discredited perspectives on sexual orientation. I wonder which, if any, other outdated and discredited views Enrique still clings to. Rojas' work and opinion have generated considerable debate, particularly regarding the intersection of religion, psychiatry, and human rights. Rojas has been a vocal advocate for integrating faith into mental health care, arguing that spirituality is crucial for maintaining a balanced life. He has emphasized the importance of a well-rounded identity model and suggests that a successful life includes a balance between love, work, culture, and friendship. As a spiritual person, I would say that I agree that balance is important, but something tells me that Rojas and I might disagree over how that should be identified and expressed. Now, in addition to his achievements as a psychologist, Rojas found significant success in the world of real estate acquisition and leasing. Thanks to the success of the Rojas Estape business, Triana 88SL, which was founded in 1988, the family boasts asset value in excess of £5.5 million as of 2015. They also manage the Reyes Magos vineyard, which is located southeast of Madrid and produces Oikos wine, once again combining Rojas's passions. And for the record, this guy really likes wine, but we'll get into that in a little bit. The El Mundo article highlights the fact that even without these ventures into real estate and winemaking, Rojas would still be extremely wealthy from the royalties generated over the years, thanks to the success of his nearly 24 books. Between 2017, he had sold more than 3 million copies of over 20 books that he had personally written. All of them have ostensibly been successful and translated into various languages. He has achieved influence as a high-profile figure thanks to his friendships with prominent political figures such as Jose Maria Aznar, Ana Botella, Ana Pastor, Tamara Falco, Jose Manuel Soria, who is the former Minister of Industry, and Jose Luis Martinez Almeida, Mayor of Madrid and promoter of Rojas's literary works. These connections are what earned him the title of psychiatrist to the elite. I did some digging into these relationships and how they formed, and from everything that I have learned, they essentially stem from several key factors, but which all tie back to the fact that Rojas has become plugged into the conservative religious network in Spain. This has allowed him to form relationships with other high-profile Spanish figures who share ideological similarities and social networks. Some of these individuals, such as Tamara Falco, have been connected to Rojas in a therapeutic context as he became a trusted figure among Spain's aristocratic and elite families. But something that has been much less clear is the degree to which Rojas's affiliation with conservative Catholic groups have aided and boosted his social reach and clout. For example, Jose Maria Aznar and Ana Botea and Jose Luis Martinez Almeida all have connections to Opus Dei. There is also an Opus Dei academic element at play here as well, which we will get into in a moment. But all of this makes me ask the two age-old questions, which are, to what extent Opus Dei is functioning as a boon to people with a desire to climb the social, political, or economic ladders, and how premeditated or intentional is that function? We can truly only speculate, but in my opinion, Opus Dei functions as a network connecting like-minded people with similar ideologies and goals. It starts to get hairy when these people insert themselves into government and politics because Opus Dei's presence starts to feel like this massive elephant in the room. Regardless of what the answer is, it's a fact that Enrique Rojas Montes' close relationships with prominent political and social figures is largely due to shared religious, moral, and ideological values, his status within Spain's elite, and his professional reputation as a psychiatrist. In my opinion, it's fair to speculate that Opus Dei's affiliation plays a central role in facilitating these connections. After all, birds of a feather flock together. Something that stood out to me was the fact that the article states that several of Rojas's patients have claimed that he often recommends his books during consultations. Now, having never read any of his books, I'm not going to pass judgment on whether or not that's a good idea or helpful to his patients. Maybe it is, I don't know. But it does remind me of various professors I have had over the course of my academic career who have promoted or required their students to read their authored books or other academic literature as part of their required coursework. Maybe it's different in other places, but here in the United States, that kind of behavior is generally not perceived well because it can turn a learning environment into a sales pitch with a captive audience. I feel like the issue is compounded when it comes from a healthcare perspective. If I went to a doctor for help with a specific health issue and part of their solution was to recommend that I buy their book, I don't know that I would be going back to that doctor. That's just me though. Again, maybe his books really are that good. Another interesting point is the fact that, according to the same El Mundo article, Rojas appears to promote alcohol consumption as an antidote to depression. It mentions this in at least two different points in the article. Quote, wine is an antidepressant, gets ghosts away from the mind, negative things. And, quote, one must have good health, a poor memory, and overcome seriousness, end quote. With the article going on to add that we might add drinking up to 3 glasses of wine, the limit of what is healthy according to the psychiatrist, end quote. This just seems like tremendously bad advice. Now, to Rojas's credit, I don't know for certain that he was the one promoting 3 glasses of wine a day because that's not a direct quote in the article, but it implies that he does because it states that 3 glasses of wine is, quote, the limit of what is healthy according to the psychiatrist, end quote. Maybe that line was intended to be taken tongue-in-cheek and that fact got lost in translation for me. I have no idea. But a quick internet search told me that the consensus among researchers is that moderate intake of wine is defined as up to 1 glass or 5 fluid ounces of 12% alcohol wine per day for women and up to 2 glasses or 10 fluid ounces of 12% wine per day for men. So 3 glasses of wine seems like a lot. Maybe the wine in Spain is weaker, I don't know. I know that the culture and attitude towards alcohol is quite a bit different overseas, so maybe 3 glasses of wine is nothing for your average Spaniard. Now, what is a direct quote was Rojas' statement that a poor memory is necessary for good health and happiness. He said that, quote, one must have good health, a poor memory, and overcome seriousness, end quote. I wonder why Rojas, a licensed psychiatrist, would advocate forgetting things as an appropriate mental health strategy. To play devil's advocate for a moment, I can imagine that perhaps he intended the statement to be taken lightly and that it was not an indication of any type of concerning or troubling ethic. But considering what I have learned about Dr. Enrique Rojas, I'll reserve the right to my own opinion and state for the record that from my perspective, in my opinion, I find that hard to believe. And not for nothing, but repressing thoughts and emotions is generally not something mental health advocates promote because it has been correlated with numerous negative health outcomes, including premature death. But, okay, so he said some controversial things and might be a bit of a bigot, not exactly breaking news. If that were all there were to say about him, there would be no real point in this episode. But as it turns out, beneath the fluff social articles promoting his wealth and public success lurks a shadowy past full of lawsuits and civil convictions. It's the type of past someone like Rojas would be eager to leave dead and buried. And considering how tricky some of this was to figure out, it's not hard to feel like someone was trying to do just that. The first mention I saw of something fishy going on in connection to Enrique Rojas's academic affiliation or credentials was in an article on Opus Libris titled "The Psychiatrists of the Work" by someone with the username Felipe, published on Wednesday, June 9th, 2004. Felipe takes a pretty dim view of the role psychiatrists occupy within Opus Dei. He wrote, "The psychiatrists associated with the work should be expelled from the Medical Association or the Association of Psychiatrists because they traffic in the ethical confidentiality owed to every patient. Currently, in Spain, there is one very famous individual named Enrique, not to be confused with Luis Rojas Marcos, a psychiatrist in New York and a legitimate professional, who, with the double-speak and half-truths so typical of Opus Dei, is passing himself off as an authority. However, if one reads, meaning if one makes the promise or sacrifice to read some pages of his books, one feels the urge to call upon purifying fire to do something about it. Cheered on by media outlets sympathetic to Opus Dei in Spain, he appears on televised debates and publishes articles that are truly alarming. Woe to those who fall into his hands. Do his professional peers not realize the manipulation? Are we the only ones speaking out?" In 1988, Rojas was involved in a legal case concerning the misrepresentation of his academic credentials. The lawsuit was initiated by the Complutense University of Madrid for defamation concerning Rojas's false claims of being a professor at UCM. The court found that Rojas had falsely presented himself as holding a position that he did not have and ruled in favor of the university. As a result, Rojas was fined 2 million pesetas, about $1 million US, for his false claims about his professional affiliation. One would think that being fined for that much money once would be enough to deter someone from doing anything to put them in that position ever again. All was quiet on the home front for a time, although it's worth pointing out that Rojas did not appear to alter or change his professional academic affiliation for decades following his conviction. $1 million fines be damned. But in 2005, someone discussed Rojas in a post on Opus Libris once again. Someone with the username Angeles Sanz posted the following to Opus Libris, quote, "The supernumerary psychiatrist of Opus Dei called Enrique Rojas, who treats members of the work to persevere, is not a professor of psychiatry at the Complutense University of Madrid, as he makes himself out to be both in the back covers of his books and at the events to which you are invited. I send the following proof." Sands included a blurry photocopy of a page bearing Madrid University letterhead and address with a transcript stating, quote, "In relation to your writing dated February 1, 2005, we inform you that Dr. Enrique Rojas Montes has not been and is not a professor of psychiatry at the Complutense University of Madrid. What we communicate to you is for the appropriate purposes. Signed, Tomas Ortiz Alonso, professor and director of the Department of Psychiatry and Medical Psychology, UCM Faculty of Medicine." When I initially found these accounts and set about trying to validate them in some way, which is always difficult, this particular situation confused me the most. It is incredibly difficult to piece together a coherent timeline, but based on what I've read, it seems like Rojas was once a teacher at UCM in some capacity, although by the time these accusations began to surface, that had become a thing of the past. But most of what I read indicated he was teaching psychiatry. At the same time, however, based on documentary evidence that I will get into, it seems highly unlikely that Rojas ever taught at UCM in any capacity whatsoever. It was only after spending quite a bit of time reading through blogs and articles and old forum posts that the truth began to take shape. Rojas's professional and academic career may, allegedly, be a lot less straightforward and honest than it now appears to be. An old blog titled "Hay vida detrás del despido," There is Life Behind the Dismissal, really helped clear things up. Try to stay with me on this because it is a little confusing, but I'll break it down in basic terms. On December 17, 2008, in a post titled "Enrique Rojas Montes is not a professor of psychiatry," it was shared that, along with a list of books published by this doctor, which I will not list to avoid giving him publicity, heavens forbid, I have been sent the following information. In psychology faculties, there is no chair of psychiatry. Psychiatry is a medical specialty, so professorships are always located in medical faculties. Enrique Rojas calls the garden of the Villanueva University Center, run by the Fomento Group, a corporate work of Opus Dei, the Villanueva campus. In no case can this be considered a university campus, since it is a garden. The zoning ordinance requires leaving free spaces for construction. The university centers in Spain do not house faculties. The Faculty of Psychology of the Complutense University of Madrid, UCM, was placed on the Somosaguas campus when it opened, and it remained there without taking occasional trips to the gardens of the Villanueva University Center, just so Enrique Rojas can locate the professorship he invented. The Villanueva University Center, aka the Villanueva campus, Fomento Group, Opus Dei, has never offered, nor does it offer, courses leading to a psychology degree. The Faculty of Psychopedagogy does not exist either inside or outside the garden of the Villanueva University Center. The Complutense University does not yet have a Faculty of Psychopedagogy, and remember, this was written in 2008. Psychopedagogy is one of the degree programs offered at the Faculty of Education at UCM. However, at the Villanueva University Center, you can pursue the second cycle of the psychopedagogy degree, as their first cycle is teaching. I have no idea, by the way, if I'm pronouncing that psychopedagogy word correctly.
Psychopedagogy.
Please do not come for me in the comments if I just butchered it terribly. I'm doing my best. When it is reported that Enrique Rojas is not a professor of psychiatry at the Complutense University of Madrid, he begins adding footnotes to his books, shifting his invented professorship around to place them where they do not exist. The average citizen is unaware of these tricks and often confuses psychiatry with psychology. Enrique Rojas Montes deliberately takes advantage of this lack of information. The fact that Rojas moved the goalpost once he began to be exposed would explain why it was so difficult for me to figure out exactly what happened, why these accusations have carried on for so many years, and how Rojas was able to carry on claiming titles he didn't technically have. Rojas began to amend and refer to his position as Professor of Psychiatry at UCM Villanueva campus, which was still a lie because the Faculty of Psychology of UCM is located about 20 minutes away. And for a time, up to about 2009, from everything that I read, Rojas tried to claim an affiliation with UCM on a technicality. Academic affiliation should be relatively easy to establish or debunk, right? Well, it is, but I am not sure that Rojas thought people would actually go to the trouble of doing the legwork and calling his bluff time after time. It is also important to remember that a lot of this played out in the early days of the internet before the hyperconnectivity that we all suffer through today. Rojas probably thought that his white lies would continue to fly under the radar, especially as he gained notoriety and fame among the Spanish elite. I have to imagine that there may have also been a sort of old world attitude that would view questioning someone high profile as gauche or distasteful, which would have added another layer of protection. Regardless, some asked their questions anyway and came away armed with evidence. Another blog titled Gato Pardo published numerous posts detailing Rojas's academic fraud, and I found one that included receipts with these accusations in the form of more university documents and correspondence. The author takes a very dim view of Rojas's academic clout, or lack thereof, and really the Spanish university system as a whole. In an October 2009 article titled Dr. Enrique Rojas Montes Fraud, they wrote, "Any clueless fool can obtain a doctorate, a specialization in psychiatry, and a professorship at a Spanish university. Here, even a scammer specializing in deceit, trickery, swindling, schemes, fraud, and intentional embezzlement has gained fame as a psychiatrist. He runs a practice charging Nobel-worthy prize fees and has embellished his resume with the title of Professor of Psychiatry at the Complutense University of Madrid without being any of that. Trusting in the immeasurable foolishness of readers and editors, he has published dozens of books without scientific rigor or any damn literary talent that have become bestsellers. He is quoted and celebrated by the serious press and by organizers of psychiatry days, conferences, congresses, etc. Yes, we are talking about Enrique Rojas Montes." They go on to share the same information that I just went over, but with some added details. In addition to not being a professor on the Faculty of Psychology at UCM, it was revealed that as of 2009, Rojas was listed as a general practitioner of medicine and registered as a licensed doctor, not a psychiatrist. In correspondence with the official College of Physicians in Madrid, it was stated in no uncertain terms that Enrique Rojas Montes is merely a licensed doctor with no registered specialty. So, if all of the documentation we've seen is authentic, as of at least 2009, Rojas was not a licensed psychiatrist, nor was he in any way on the faculty of UCM. In a post on Opus Libris, Ana Azanzo wrote, "Does anyone know how many books he has already published as a psychiatrist, how many interviews he has given as a famous and successful psychiatrist, how many patients he has treated as a specialist in psychiatry, and how many millions he has pocketed thanks to a title that, strangely enough, he has not even disclosed to the medical board?" So let me take a step back and reframe everything that I just went over. This is my understanding of the situation. Once upon a time, Rojas was formally attached to UCM, but that came to an end relatively early on for reasons that are unclear. But at one point therein, or shortly after, he became affiliated with the Fomento Group and the Villanueva University Center, which provided a tenuous tie to UCM. Eventually, the university became Universidad Villanueva, and actually, I think that Universidad Villanueva's Wikipedia page makes things even plainer. The university is defined now as a private university located in Madrid, Spain, affiliated to the Catholic organization Opus Dei. It is the smallest university in Madrid by number of bachelor's students. It started teaching in the year 2020, although its history as an institution can be traced back to 1977. My theory is that Universidad Villanueva, formerly the Villanueva University Center affiliated with UCM, operated by the Fomento Group and Opus Dei corporate work, has become something of an academic Trojan horse, with Opus Dei lurking inside wearing Rojas's face, and possibly other people as well, let's be real. Beginning in 1977, Rojas used his academic affiliation with UCM via the Villanueva Study Center as an additional professional leg up. UCM is a prominent Spanish institution with notable positions in various global university rankings. Being associated with such a well-known university would doubtless be a good thing for Rojas. The publicly available information about the history of UV makes that pretty clear. Quote, Universidad Villanueva, located in Madrid, Spain, has its origins in 1977 with the establishment of the Fomento Teaching School, which is affiliated with the Complutense University of Madrid. In 1997, the Centro Universitario Villanueva was founded, also attached to the Complutense University, initially offering a law degree. That same year, an agreement was reached for the incorporation of the studies of the Escuela de Magisterio de Fomento. Over the years, the institution expanded its academic offerings to include degrees in psychopedagogy, journalism, advertising and public relations, film studies, business administration and management, and psychology. After 23 years as an affiliated center, it gained recognition as a private university in 2020 and began its activities as such in the 2020-2021 academic year. While specific details about the university's funding sources are not publicly disclosed, it is known that the Universidad Villanueva is affiliated with the Catholic organization Opus Dei. The organization comprises two colleges, the College of Social and Legal Sciences, offering degrees in fields such as business administration, law, education, communication, and psychology, and the College of Health Sciences, offering degrees in psychology. It is also important to mention that in addition to 1977 allegedly being the year that UV began, although it wouldn't become known by that name until 2019, it was also a significant year in Rojas's professional career because that was when he began to claim that he was the chair of psychiatry at the Complutense University of Madrid, something which undeniably elevated his prominence in the field of psychiatry in Spanish society. And there you have it. As his white lies began to be exposed, rather than coming clean and finding a new path in life, Rojas appears to have doubled down, using this university center turned private institution as cover. But that cover got blown repeatedly, necessitating constant amendments, footnotes, and lies, and ultimately resulting in the legitimizing of UV as a private educational institution. That is just my personal theory and speculation because there probably isn't really any way to know for sure. Publicly, UV states that its transition to an independent status was driven by a desire for greater autonomy in educational and administrative matters. While Rojas has a relationship going back decades with the Fomento group in all iterations of Villanueva, it's impossible to know how much, if any, of Villanueva's evolution over the years and Rojas's relationship with it are a result of Rojas needing academic clout that he could not apparently get any other way. It is strange to me that someone who is ostensibly intelligent and literate would need to fudge the facts about something like academic affiliation. From what I can tell, based on what I found online, at some point between now and the early 2010s, mention of Rojas's affiliation with UCM in the press finally began to fizzle out. That puts us at more than a decade since he was convicted of defaming UCM, but hey, better late than never, I guess. In the end, Enrique Rojas Montes got what he wanted and can finally say that he is a professor of psychiatry at a rural university called Villanueva, and for the first time since 1977 actually be telling the truth. And it seems like, judging from the review left on Universidad Villanueva's Building A on Google Maps 5 years ago, that Villanueva has finally untethered itself from UCM once and for all. Quote, "The truth is that the university is a bit of a mess, but at least they no longer say it's affiliated with Complutense, since none of its courses are validated by UCM. But let's not get anything twisted. Everything may technically be on the up and up now, but it is ill-gotten at best." Now, before I end this segment on Rojas's academic and medical duplicity, it's worth mentioning that the entire snafu surrounding UV and UCM is not the only institutional inconsistency on Rojas's record. Starting in 1984, he began to claim the title of Professor of Psychiatry at the Faculty of Medicine at Badajoz, a satellite campus of the University of Extremadura, UNEX. And today, his Wikipedia page states that he is, quote, Professor Emeritus of Psychiatry of UNEX, although I couldn't find any information on when that went into effect. But interestingly enough, a 2009 article written by a woman claiming to be a victim of Rojas's stated that he allegedly never actually even served in that capacity at Badajoz. According to her, eyewitnesses stated that the arrangement only lasted about 10 minutes before Rojas applied for a leave of absence, alleging incompatibility with his schedule at UCM. You know, that other Spanish institute that he was fudging the facts on. And all of this has been corroborated by Professor Calcido Ordóñez and by UNEX's own records. And here's the thing. The leave of absence was granted under false pretenses because, as we already established, Rojas never actually taught at UCM to begin with, but Rojas never returned to teach at UNEX, and at some point his leave of absence became an emeritus professorship, and once again, Rojas had managed to secure an academic credential under some apparently bizarre circumstances. Maria Menchaca is a Spanish aristocrat who was married to the Spanish celebrity Jorge Juste. Their relationship had been highly publicized, and it became the center of a controversial and bitter divorce that Spanish media reveled in. This case became increasingly contentious as prominent figures like Rojas became involved. Testimony suggested that Rojas's actions involved not only false documentation, but also attempts to sidestep justice through personal connections and potentially corrupt practices within the legal and medical fields. On March 9, 2009, an article in El Mundo revealed that Rojas had been fined for violating patient confidentiality, fining him 2 million pesetas, which is equivalent to just shy of $1 million US, paid to his victim, Maria Menchaca. Rojas became involved in Menchaca's care during a period of domestic unrest in Menchaca's marriage. Menchaca, a viscountess and an example of the elite clientele that Rojas has traditionally catered to, was married to Jorge, but they divorced in the 90s. Leading up to that divorce, in an effort to save the marriage, Menchaca went to Rojas no less than 11 times between December 1991 and February 1992. A year and a half later, during divorce proceedings, Rojas submitted a psychiatric report on Menchaca, which stated that she had an immature personality with histrionic and narcissistic tendencies and clear and serious emotional and personality incapacities, which made her unfit to parent the 3 children she had with Huste, the ultimate motivation behind involving Rojas in the divorce proceedings. The move completely blindsided Menchaca, who had been unaware that her personal history would be used against her in court. So she took him to court, stating that Rojas violated the most basic professional confidentiality, handing over my psychological report, completely false, by the way, to the opposing party without my knowledge. He, who talks so much about ethics, acted immorally. Madrid's Court of First Instance, number 43, ruled that, quote, it is not difficult to deduce that the friendship to a greater or less degree between Mr. Huste and Dr. Rojas Montes was decisive for the issuance of the report. It is equally undeniable that the defendant knew that his report, which was clearly unfavorable to Mrs. Menchaca, would cause serious harm to her, which increases the severity of his breach of professional obligations. Doctors are supposed to be held to a high ethical standard, and Rojas clearly violated that standard in allowing his apparent friendship with Huste to trump the privacy of his patient. I think that the divorce must have been pretty ugly, and Huste hoped to sway the court in his favor when determining who would be awarded custody of their children. Rojas was not convicted in a criminal court for breaking patient confidentiality, but he was fined in a civil court nonetheless. During and following the court case, other accusations of misconduct and malpractice were made against Rojas, alleging that Rojas would use his position as a doctor to act in conspiracy with the patient's spouse or other family members, often in an effort to help the patient's family get something that they wanted out of the patient, even if it was just their compliance and submission. Maria Menchaca's case has been that I could find the only case brought against Rojas in a court of law, but her accusations against Rojas of manipulation, slander, betrayal, psychopathy, and cynicism are in good company. And here are some examples. This individual goes as far as issuing official medical certificates to husbands, prescribing the psychiatric confinement of their wives, even though he has no relationship with them or has not examined them before issuing the certificates. If one certificate doesn't achieve the objective, it's no problem. Enrique Rojas issues another one once he learns of the failed attempt. Needless to say, this man always acts behind the backs of his victims. No one reports Enrique Rojas' malpractice. The environment does not suspect anything. It is believed the victim is in the hands of a professor of psychiatry at the Complutense University of Madrid, and Rojas is ensured that everyone around her believes she is mentally ill, so any deterioration in her condition won't be surprising. He tries to remove any adults who inconvenience him by all means to achieve his goals, which, in my opinion, are to extract as much money as possible and recruit for Opus Dei, or, in its place, to bring the Opus Dei organization closer to everyone he can, in case they can become continuous donors, supporters, and collaborators. Enrique Rojas is not a man of science, but a man of ultra-Catholic ideology, who tries to impose it at any cost when he sees any possibility, and the risk to him is not excessive. Spain enacted Law 41/2002 in November of 2002 for the purpose of regulating patient autonomy and health documentation and information-related rights and obligations. The law reinforces the principle of patient autonomy, and a breach of Law 41/2002 that constitutes a human rights violation could lead to legal recourse both within the Spanish legal system and possibly in international human rights courts. The severity of the violation would determine the level of legal action taken, which could range from civil suits to criminal charges or even international human rights complaints. So suffice it to say that this is an extremely grave matter, and the allegations made against Rojas should not be taken lightly. If you look past the puff pieces that have been written over the years, including the 2024 El Mundo article that I cited earlier, Enrique Rojas Montes' professional career is anything but straightforward. Attempting to establish a clear chain of events, particularly throughout the years preceding and during Rojas' various legal troubles, is difficult, bordering on impossible. But two things are certain. Scandals aside, Rojas has apparently managed to sail through the turbulence with his public persona and not insignificant wealth more or less intact. But he has also left a trail of individuals behind him who wish they had never met him. In 2018, Rojas was featured in a public piece about the 74 most influential faces of Opus Dei. The article identified Rojas as psychiatrist, specifically to the Spanish elite. He is also featured on the Club of Rome's members webpage. The Club of Rome identifies itself as, quote, a platform of diverse thought leaders who identify holistic solutions to complex global issues, drawing on the unique collective know-how of our 100 members, notable scientists, economists, business leaders, and former politicians. According to the Club of Rome, Rojas is a highly educated, well-respected authority in the field of psychiatry. It's how I found out about some of the other accolades and titles Rojas has acquired over the years, including the director of the Spanish Psychiatric Institute of Madrid, visiting professor at the University of New York, and professor associated with the Spanish Company Institute, or IESE. He is featured on the landing page for the Home Renaissance Foundation, a London-based think tank that claims to promote and develop greater recognition of the importance of the work required to create a thriving home, because a home does not build itself and needs to be well managed. HRF's purpose is to bring about change in our understanding of the professional dimension of the work of the home for a well-balanced society. I felt like that was a lot of awfully Opus Dei coded language, and as it turns out, there is a reason for that. Obviously, there's Rojas' presence on HRF's site, and he is a publicly recognized supernumerary of Opus Dei, but there's more. As an aside, I feel like I am getting really, really good at spotting Opus Dei PR and language from a mile away, which really just goes to show how long I have been steeping my brain in this shit. It's kind of sad. But anyway, this is how I found out what was going on. This might feel like a little bit of a sidebar tangent, but it actually blows the lid off of how people like Rojas end up indirectly participating in some pretty unsavory stuff. Plus, this is the perfect opportunity for me to show you how I found the info that I did. First, I googled Home Renaissance Foundation plus Opus Dei, in quotations like that, so that I would be shown only the results that correlated my two queries. I got some interesting results too. The first link came from opusdei.org and is titled The Central Place of Home and Family in Human Life. It's an article that was published in 2014, written for the 10th anniversary of the opening of the Cultural Center Harmika, an Opus Dei center in Zagreb, Croatia. The topic of the conference was the family in the teaching of St. Josemaria. A little ways down in the article, it stated, a guest speaker from London, also an economist, spoke about the professionalization of housework in the light St. Josemaria's teachings. She presented the work of the Home Renaissance Foundation, which aims to raise awareness of the importance of home issues for the benefit of individuals, families, and society. Yes, there is a massive typo in that quote, and I will not correct it. I find grammatical errors on Opus Dei's website on the regular, and I have to say, very sloppy work over there. But that wasn't the only connection I found between HRF and Opus Dei. The second result in my Google search was a page from HRF's own site. The link takes you to the landing page for HRF's experts, whatever that means. Juan Narbona is the featured professor of the Faculty of Social Communication at the Pontifical University of the Holy Cross. The Pontifical University of the Holy Cross, or the Pontificia Università della Santa Croce, is a private pontifical university in Rome that has been entrusted to Opus Dei. Fernando Ocaires, Opus Dei's current prelate, is the chancellor. It's about as Opus Dei of a university as it could possibly be. HRF's expert, Narbona, is a professor at that university. According to that website, Narbona is also the worldwide editor of opusdei.org. So all of those typos that I just mentioned are typos that Mr. Narbona or his underlings should have caught. But they didn't. Like I said, it's sloppy. He has also reportedly written 3 different books and contributed to several international publications. There were more results for HRF. I started seeing results for Opus Dei articles that seemed written to correlate caring for a home with domestic work. In Opus Dei, that phrase can really only correspond to one thing: the institution's servant class, the assistant numeraries, although they may sometimes throw the supernumerary wives and mothers a bone as well. For example, there's a 2017 article on opusdei.org titled "Domestic Work Holds Significance for Business Schools," in which Dora Del Hoyo, one of Opus Dei's earliest female members, was identified as the topic of an international study involving 94 countries. I'll give you one guess what I think that is really about. It's not about improving the home lives of ordinary people, although that's certainly the mask. A little further down, I saw a linked PDF with the title Home Renaissance Foundation Working Papers, published on March 2011, and outlines the competency curriculum for the bachelor's degree of Hospitality Management, ESDAI. ESDAI is connected to Opus Dei via umbilical cord because, according to HRF's own working papers, it emerged as part of the initiative of the founder of Opus Dei, Jose Maria Escrivá de Balaguer, to train women as managers of the services with the necessary skills for this task. And there's more. I kept pulling this thread. Further down, I found a linked PDF titled Annual Report 2020 from Limmat Stiftung. Limmat Stiftung is a Switzerland-based umbrella foundation, which is the type of large charitable foundation that allows individuals to establish smaller, dependent sub-foundations under its structure, which liberates donors from all of the usual administrative tasks that running a charity would normally entail. Founded in 1972 by people affiliated with Opus Dei, Limmat Stiftung claims to be the oldest umbrella foundation in Switzerland with a specific focus on the training of trainers as well as the promotion of women and children. According to an article from the Swiss-German news site Blick, Limmat finances educational and social projects. Everything on their site seems to be worded pretty vaguely, so it's hard to tell what the charity actually does. But its 2020 annual report outlined a variety of projects aimed at children, youth, and adults. Opus Dei is mentioned 3 times in that annual report. On page 19, under Other Projects for Youth, it states that the Limmat Foundation has supported female students of the Institut Supérieur des Sciences Infirmières, ISSI, annually since 2011. Some of the trainee nurses subsequently work at the Moncole Hospital, an initiative of members of the Catholic Prelature of Opus Dei. The graduates of ISSI are highly sought after also in other hospitals in the Dominican Republic. On page 23, in a blurb discussing microenterprise training in Peru, it states that the local partner, Cadespa Peru, founded by members of Opus Dei, has developed the idea of processing these plantains into flakes, flour, and fiber textiles. I never thought that I would encounter Opus Dei in food science, but here we are. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but lastly, on page 25, under Other Projects for Adults, I found Limmat Stiftung's tie to HRF. For London, England, the home as source of well-being, it states that HRF, founded by members of Opus Dei, researches and propagates the importance of the work that creates a home and the family a source of strength and a place of security, because the well-being of the individual and the family has a positive effect on the cohesion of society. That's a bunch of word salad, but here's what I think it all really boils down to. HRF, Limmat Stiftung, and Cadespa Peru are corporate works of Opus Dei, meaning they were founded by members of Opus Dei, but the organization insists that it has no vested interest or attachment to them. But for better or for worse, as outlined by countless testimonies and in the book Opus, it is a fact that the efforts members of Opus Dei make to support and run these various hospitality schools and training centers and hospitals, apparently, have resulted in numerous women from socioeconomically disadvantaged backgrounds being sort of shuffled into Opus Dei residences and centers to cook and clean and iron and wipe the asses of the higher class members who reside there as assistant numeraries. And these women have gone on to allege that they were coerced into committing their lives to Opus Dei, even though the promises of education and opportunities and pay that had convinced them to enroll initially had long since evaporated. This is a small slice of the Opus Dei web, and Enrique Rojas Montes is connected to it all. Throughout the entirety of 2024, Rojas appeared at a variety of speaking events, podcasts, and programs, continuing to wax eloquent on subjects such as his vision of the concept of happiness, defined by the pursuit of a purpose in life, or moralizing conditions such as anxiety with positive anxiety and negative anxiety, and so on. Since 2011, Rojas has written 5 books with titles such as Do Not Give Up, Live Your Life, How to Overcome Depression, 5 Tips to Enhance Intelligence, Everything You Have to Know About Life, which is a bold title, and Understand Your Emotions. His writing has been recognized with the Medical Humanist of the Year Award, the Journalism Boehringer Ingelheim Award, and the Health Opinion Award. He has an Instagram account of nearly 500,000 people where he posts frequently dispensing pop psychology advice such as, don't forget that the purest suffering usually brings with it the clearest and most transparent knowledge, and depression is not a weakness, it is a disease that deserves to be treated. Seeking help is the bravest act we can do for ourselves, along with reminders about the existence of his various books. And hey, I'm not about to cast aspersions on the topics that Rojas discusses or even the advice that he provides. I am also not a psychiatrist, so who am I to say whether or not his advice is sound? But one thing is certain. His particular focus seems to be on his idea of true happiness and on the prescriptive methods that he has developed to coerce the onset of that happiness in his patients and the fans of his books, although a number of people would probably say that their interactions with him left them anything but happy. The Enrique Rojas Montes that is in the public eye today is pretty far removed from the impression that he had on people like Maria Menchaca, Isabel Caballero, and a number of other individuals, both within and completely outside of Opus Dei. It goes to show the impact that this organization and the people it seems to attract can have on the lives of totally innocent people. People completely detached from Opus Dei. People like you and me. In the bio to her blog, Enrique Rojas, psychiatrist, lies, plugs, and tests, you know, the one that has the majority of the details that I learned about Rojas and Maria Menchaca in the UCM scandal. Well, in the bio of her blog, she wrote, I've come to the conclusion that this individual projects his own miseries onto others, and with psychopathy, perversity, Machiavellianism, premeditation, and treachery always behind your back, he attempts to annul those he considers obstacles to achieving his goals, wealth, and new recruits for Opus Dei. Of course, that's just her opinion. One woman out of billions. But after everything we've gone over in this episode, it's hard not to feel like something just is not adding up with this guy. Like, maybe he isn't the good doctor that he wants everyone to believe that he is. If you enjoyed this episode or found it helpful or transformative in any way, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing. Also, remember that details to learn more about my work, connect with me on social media, or support my endeavors are all linked down below. Also, don't forget that in addition to YouTube, you can also find the Deep Dive Project on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Rumble, and pretty much anywhere podcasts live. If you listen there, please be sure to leave a 5-star rating or a review. It helps the Deep Dive Project reach more people. If you feel like hanging around, go check out some of the other playlists and content on the community tab over on my channel. Thank you for being here, and remember, nolite te bastardes carborandorum. Don't let the bastards drag you down.